Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm excited to do a review for you for the Marvel Legends 20th Anniversary Series 1 Iron Man. For anyone that's not entirely sure what this is a celebration of the 20 years since ToyBiz began the Marvel Legends line, which, as we know, has now been taken over by Hasbro. So what they're doing is they're going back and they're revisiting those original toys that were released. Now, these aren't reissues, they are new Legends figures, but they are based heavily on the original toys. So what we see here is an old school comic book Iron Man, who also comes with a two-sided backdrop, so not quite the same as the original, but still pretty cool. That being said, if you see my reviews before, you know this goes. We're going to take a look at Iron Man's packaging, then we'll open it up, we'll check out the backdrop display, we'll check out the figure itself, posability, the additional parts. Naturally, I'll be doing some group shots and comparisons today, and then at the end of the video, I'll give my final thoughts. So we can see our blister card here, and it's done up in the style of the original ToyBiz Legends toys. You get Iron Man front and center, you get an additional pair of hands with closed fists, you get little repulsor effects right here for his fist, and then you get these smoke trail effects. And you can't see it very well, but you get the backdrop here, which on one side is a comic book cover from the old Iron Man comics, and then on the other side is a cardboard recreation of the plastic backdrop that came with the original. Now, personally, I find it very disappointing we're not getting that nice 3D plastic backdrop, but this is what they went with. You can also see here an additional just regular Tony Stark head. Now this, as far as the toy itself, is where it's probably the most different from the original. The original toy actually just had a removable mask. That yellow portion right there would just pull off, and you would see Stark's face underneath with the helmet still on. This time around, for whatever reason, they opted to just give him two separate heads. I don't know if it was a budget thing or a stylistic choice, because Marvel or Hasbro is really big about the swappable heads. I'm not sure. Maybe they just want it to be more in line with their usual stuff. And then aside from that, the posability is very similar. I don't think the original had ab crunch, but I could be misremembering. And then the actual design's a little bit different, especially in the helmet region here. It was a little more squat looking. But overall, it comes pretty close. Again, it's not a reissue, it's more of a celebration of the original. So we go ahead and we spin this around. And you can see here, picture of the toy. You got Stark with him holding the Iron Man helmet, which is something you can actually do with this, right? You can pop off the helmeted head and just have him hold it like a plain helmet. Very neat touch. And then this shows off the reverse side of that backdrop where it says Stark on it. Again, the original toy actually had a plastic base with a plastic Stark sign that he could stand in front of. Kind of disappointed we didn't get that, but I do like the fact that they at least made this reversible, so you can either have this image or you can have the comic book cover. Personally, I'll probably go for the comic book cover. I think it's neater, but it's your toy, so choose whatever you will. And then here we get this little blurb, and I'll just read it this time because it's going to say the same thing on all of them. But it says, for 20 years, the Marvel Legends series has brought the iconic characters and storylines of the Marvel Universe to fans worldwide. To celebrate the 2002 ToyBiz debut release, Marvel Legends proudly presents the 25th Anniversary Series 1, featuring Captain America, Iron Man, Hulk, and Toad. Now, so far, we've seen Captain America and Iron Man, be up for pre-order, and Hulk, though he hasn't been released stateside yet. Some people have gotten a hold of him. They probably got him like as an Asian import. Now, Toad is the only one I haven't seen a listing for yet. And rather than release all these guys together in one wave, they're releasing them about a month apart or so. So they're kind of stretching it out over the course of the anniversary. Not my preference. I would have, preferred to see this released as a wave, since it is all supposed to be Series 1. But that's what they went with. So we'll just kind of be doing these 1 month at a time. All right, so that's the packaging. Very cool recreation of the stylings of the old ToyBiz toys. Now, ToyBiz, they had been doing the Marvel stuff for a long time, even before Legends was a thing. I remember being quite young and being very, very into X-Men and Spider-Man. And, they were just putting all that stuff out. I loved the old ToyBiz toys. I actually have a memory of seeing it was called Future Apocalypse, and it was like a very stylized version of the X-Men character Apocalypse. And I wanted that thing so bad. Never could afford it though, so seeing this, very 90s style of packaging come back just really tugs at the heartstrings a little bit. But like I always say, I don't buy these for the packaging, so let's go ahead and open it up. Okay, now we get to see Iron Man out of the packaging. We can see his backdrop right here attached to the base. And the base itself actually has little pegs, so you can attach his feet to it. You get our 2 repulsor blast effects, and then you also get these extra smoky effects that wrap around those for just kind of added displayability. You get 2 closed-fisted hands, and then the alternate Tony Stark head. And now we see the figure itself, and it's very, very shiny. It, opts for the very flat color look, which is a way to reference not only, more comic book inspired appearance, but also just the older toys that didn't really go as into the surface detailing. This definitely looks like something from ToyBiz. The posability is fine, like he's got the ball jointed head on a hinge here so he can look up and down. Really tight hinge. There it goes. It's a ratcheted hinge, which is interesting. He's got the universal shoulders here, which this part of the shoulder can kind of catch on his armor, so you want to push down when you lift it. But they go every which way, bicep swivel, double bend elbows, and then he has a wrist swivel. Now these hands, they have the little ports in them for the blasts, but because of that, they don't have a hinge, right? So they can't do this. They just stay out like that, which is fine. The other hands can do it. He's got a ratcheted ab crunch and back extension, full waist swivel, which is also on a soft ratchet, universal hips, thigh swivel, double bend knees. He's got a boot swivel, ankle rock, and ankle rotation. Now, one thing that's a little odd about this figure is that his ankle rocking is ratcheted, which is normal, that's fine, but the stopping points for the ratchets make him kind of difficult to pose. Basically, you have this point where the feet are bent, toes are pointed upward, and you got to bend his knees a bit to get him to stand, or you have the next point, which is this, where the toes, they're not level, they're pointed down. So it makes it kind of difficult to just put him in a neutral standing position. You're kind of almost required to just put him in some sort of dynamic pose just to get him to stand up, which is really weird. I don't know why that is the way it is. It's the first time I've really had this issue with a Legends toy, and I think this guy could have benefited from having more stopping points in his ankle ratchet. Just seems like a bit of an oversight on Hasbro's part there. All right, so now to play with his accessories, you can go ahead and attach the blasts to the palms of his hands like that, just by themselves. Or you can put smoke around him, because why not? So pretty much get this in position, get the blast effect on there, and then wrap this around the end of it until you get something like that, which just makes it a little more cool looking, fleshes it out more than just this tiny little, beam of energy. And it's totally optional. You can go for the smoke to give it more fleshed out appearance, or you can just do the simple blast. Totally up to you. We also have the optional closed hands, so you just pull the open palm off, attach this guy. Oh, that's the wrong hand. Don't attach that guy, attach this guy. Get it on there, got the rotation, and it hinges back and forth. So you get him doing something cool with his fist there. And then, of course, we get the Tony Stark head. So you just pop the Iron Man head off, pop the Tony one on. Tony one's a little tighter, but it'll go on there. And you can get the old Playboy himself with that just scoundrelous look on his. Look at him. Look at him. He knows what he did. He knows what he did. We don't know, but Tony knows, and he looks pretty proud of it. Okay, so if you want to recreate that cool little bit from the packaging, you can just use the Iron Man head as an empty helmet and have him kind of hold on to it, which is really neat in my opinion. Just gotta pose it just the right way to where it sits there and stays in place. Come on, buddy, hold your helmet. He doesn't want to do it. Let's get the second bend. It's a little tighter. There we go. Now we can kind of rest it in there. Get it set up. Now he doesn't want to stand. There we go. Something like that. So that's a really cool shot you can get too. You can have Tony just, holding the helmet in his arms and smirking at you mischievously with one eyebrow up. Now, one group shot I wanted to do was with the recently released comic book Doctor Strange, or classic Doctor Strange. That was a Walmart exclusive here in the US. And the reason I wanted to put these two together is to highlight just how very similar comic book Tony and comic book Steven look from each other. Like, depending on the artist's rendition, very, very similar looking guys. especially when Strange grows his hair out a little bit more. And just something I want to look at, like these are the two tall, dark, and handsome mustached guys, and I don't know. I don't know why they were drawn so similarly to each other. They do stand out from each other a little bit more in the MCU, because Robert Downey Jr. and Benedict Cumberbatch just don't look very much alike at all. But the funny thing is, they changed them both from having plain mustaches to having goatees. So they could have, like, you know, done one or the other with each guy just to help distinguish them, but they both went from having mustaches to goatees, I guess. Luckily, the actors' facial structures are very different, so, you know, there's no mixing them up. But these two, I mean, they could easily be the same guy, right? Put some gray here on the sides for Tony, and you'd have a hard time telling that wasn't Doctor Strange. Now here's another fun group shot. This is with an MCU version of Iron Man, and this is from one of the older waves. This is actually not mine. This is actually my son's toy. He had a little, you know, stint where he wanted Marvel Legends stuff, so he's got this and like a comic book Captain America. But I just want to do this to highlight the very different aesthetics between your classic comic book character and your live-action movie interpretation. The live-action one is obviously a lot busier, which is a pretty common theme with MCU designs. We talked about that a bit when it came to the old Doctor Strange wave. Comparing movie Strange with comic book Strange, there's just a lot more line work, a lot more surface detailing, and that holds true for Iron Man here too. Now personally, I am a fan of the MCU Iron Man design. I just think it's appropriately complex looking. You know, when you have all the multiple articulated plates and stuff on his body, it makes sense, right? Because you kind of need that ability to move around inside your suit. Whereas this suit, it doesn't look like you could get a lot of movement out of it, right? Like this looks like just a solid chest piece. Now, obviously the toy can articulate its abs, but in real life, I mean, it's just a solid piece. So, I don't know. Obviously, it's a very classic design, and I'm not hating on it in any way, because, I mean, it's the one that, you know, pretty much started it. But I will say I do find myself a little more drawn to the streamlined approach that the MCU takes with the suit. But they're both very good. And one thing that's interesting is that the repulsor blast effects here are completely different pieces, which is a little surprising, because they could easily just keep recycling this one over and over. But they did a unique piece. It's got a wider beam here at the base, but then a smaller, like, sunburst around the palm. So, you know, it's good. I like that there's some variety there and they're not the exact same piece. I wouldn't have been overly bothered if they were the same piece, because again, it's a blast effect, and it's basically, you know, the same weapon being used, so it makes sense. But it's a nice little bone for Hasbro to throw us in a world of repaints and retools. Alright, and lastly, we get to see Iron Man attached to his base. And you can see right now I'm using the backdrop that's the Stark sign from the original toy. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that because of the stubborn ankles on this guy and their lack of range, it can be a little difficult to peg both of his feet onto the pegs here. So you just gotta kind of twist them around and work with it till you get something that, you know, holds steady. So, yeah, here goes the Stark sign behind him. Or we could go with my preferred backdrop, the comic book art. Look at that. How cool is this? I can get it back in there now. All right. Okay. So this is really cool. It's a recreation of, looks like Iron Man number 174. So, but thinking early 90s-ish? I'm not sure. The artwork looks early 90s. I don't know what... Oh, it says right here. Well, it's September... No, I don't know. I don't know what year it is. It just says September. All right, so I think this works with the figure's design a lot better. It just matches his aesthetic, and it's really cool having all these other Iron Man suits flying around behind him. I think it makes for a really, really nice display. But it's your toy, so display it however you wish. And this completes our look at the new Marvel Legends 20th Anniversary Series 1 Iron Man. Overall, I very much like this figure. I think it's very cool. I love the retro-inspired look. I love the callbacks to the original toy with the backdrop. I'm a little disappointed that the backdrop is cardboard and not, you know, actual 3D plastic one, but it is what it is. I like that he's got the optional Tony Stark head. Also disappointed that, you know, they didn't just recreate the removable mask from the original toy, but for whatever reason, Hasbro decided that's the route they were going. The cool part of that, though, is like we saw, you can just remove this helmeted head and just have him hold it or set it to the side as a separate helmet, so that's always nice. I do like the added effects here with the smoke going around, the repulsor effects. Great posability, except for the ankles. The ankles, again, if they just had, you know, about twice the number of ratcheted stopping points that they do, they'd be perfect. Like, just increase that little gear ratio 100%, but they didn't do that. So very much gives me like Combiner Wars Optimus Prime vibes, where like he just can't stand in a neutral stance no matter what you do. So there's a shame. But those, you know, those little drawbacks aside, I think he's a great figure. I love the packaging he comes in. I love everything he comes with. And, you know, if you want a classic or comic-inspired Iron Man for your collection, if you like, you know, the comic look more, I think he's going to be perfect for you. However, that is just how I feel about this toy, so now I want to know what you all think of it. Do you see a place for this in your collection? Do you want to pick up this very classic version of Iron Man? Do you have the original ToyBiz Iron Man? And if you do you see it, you know, worth your while to pick this up? Or do you not want this for some reason? Either you're just not interested in the character, you don't like the design, or maybe you have the original one and you don't want this one. Any and all feedback is always welcome in the comments section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for joining me for this look at the new Marvel Legends 20th Anniversary Series 1 Iron Man. And with all that said, I will see you next time.